Good afternoon. Today is the second Torah reading of the book of Numbers, the Torah reading of NASO. It is also a day before Shavuos. Just a reminder, next week we will not be having a class. So just keep that in mind. But we're here today. Just Shabbos was a wonderful day for the Jewish people as we celebrated the rescue of 4 of the captives. But something a little interesting that I read or saw a video of what happened to one of the not a day before, say a few weeks before, Lag BaOmer. So Lag BaOmer was about 2 weeks ago. So on Lag BaOmer, there was a video going around about a rabbi who leads the yeshiva in Or Yehuda, which is a little community in Israel. His name is Rabbi Shalom Hendel, and he called to the stage the father of the hostage, Almog Meir. And he gave a blessing, being that he was a Kohen. He gave them the priestly blessings, telling them that with this priestly blessings we should soon hear good news, and everybody should be healthy and well. And of course, Almog Meir's son, Almog Meir, was one of the fellows who were rescued. The Torah tells us, and the Medrash explains, and the commentaries tell us, that what protects the Jewish people through the time of exile is the blessing of the priestly blessings. Just like, and we actually say it in our prayers when we do the special Shema before retiring to bed, and the Medrash tells us that just like King Solomon, who was protected with 60 bodyguards from all sides, and he had them protecting them from all sides, so too we have the 60 letters that are in the priestly blessings is what protects us as well. There's even a commentary that's known as the Chidah, who wants to learn, Rabbi Avraham Azulai, the grandfather of the Chidah. He says that King Solomon actually had the letters of the priestly blessings around his bed, and that's what protected him. So we have what protects us as the people, as what's going on in the time of exile, is the priestly blessings. Because the Medrash tells us that not only is the priestly blessing something that protects us, but in fact this is the only cause of our existence. While everything else in the world deteriorates and degrades as time goes on, as we look at the world, things dry up, lose its taste and flavor to whatever it may be. Right. As the Medrash tells us, that from the time that the temple was destroyed, every single day the curse only gets worse. Meaning the terrible things that happen in the world, talking about the world's deterioration from an ethical values, even from a pragmatic and practical, simplistic type of view, is always getting worse. So the Talmud asks, how did the Jewish people survive then? We're the only things that have been around for that long. And the Talmud explains it's because we have the priestly blessings, and that's what keeps us going, and that's why we do not fall into that deterioration as well. So what is so unique about this priestly blessing? And what we're going to talk about today is these priestly blessings. It's unique because in this week's Torah reading is when the priestly blessings were given to Aaron and his sons to give to the Jewish people, as we'll soon talk about. But also, in the diaspora, we don't do the priestly blessings. The kohanim don't go up in front, I should say, to do the priestly blessings. We say them in the prayers, as the chazan says them, but the kohen does not stand up and represent and bless the Jewish people only on the major festivals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos. And this coming Wednesday and Thursday, we will be having those priestly blessings again. But today we're going to talk about and analyze these priestly blessings. What are they? Why are they so important? Why are they the channel, the conduit to be able to get the great blessings that we have? If God already told us on Rosh Hashanah that we're going to get blessings, why all of a sudden now do we need the priestly blessings to get for the blessings to come? Isn't it already there in our chamber? Isn't it there already for us to get? Secondly, why is it only the kohanim? Why shouldn't we go to a person who is highly educated, a person who's highly spiritual, a person who has a connectivity to God, or somebody has some type of special relationship to get that blessing? Why is it just by the mere fact you were born to Aaron, you came from a certain family, you automatically have that lineage that you can give that blessing to the Jewish people? What's so unique about the very fact that just because you come from the family of Aaron, you can give that blessing? Just a little side tidbit story, a fascinating story to underline this point. There was many years ago in the 1960s, when they first started Chabad on campus, when they were going and getting students from different universities, they would come for Shabbos to Crown Heights. And this was called Pegisha. Like they would call a Shabbos with Hasidim, or Shabbos in Crown Heights, a Shabbos with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whatever name they gave it. And in the 1960s, Rabbi Shmuel Lew of London, England, brought 20 students from the University of Pennsylvania to Chabad. After having long discussions and classes, they came to Chabad headquarters. They came to 770 for Shabbos. And after Shabbos, they had the privilege of going into the Rebbe for a private audience. And many times, this was unique, that they were able to ask. It was like a question and answer session that they were there. It was open, the dialogue, and a lot of interesting conversations that we know today about science, Torah, and so on, were discussed with these students who were very intellectual, of course, and asked, a lot of questions which maybe a regular chassid would not ask. The last student that went in was there for a lengthy amount of time. When he came out, they asked the student what happened. So the student was a Kohen, and he told the Rebbe that he's planning to marry a convert. Now, according to Jewish law, a Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. And this woman wasn't Jewish when he met her, and now she's converting, but he was a Kohen. So the Rebbe tells him that you're a Kohen. He says, big deal, so I'm a Kohen. I never met Aaron never met me. What's the big deal? Life moves on. I'm not religious, and so on. And the Rebbe all of a sudden put a serious face on. This is what the student says. And the Rebbe turned to his library and he said, you see all these books here? The Rebbe's room was full of books, from wall to wall, floor to ceiling. He says, I know all these books. I know lots of Torah. But I still can't bless the Jewish people because I'm not from the family of Aaron. You can do that. And you want to give that up? You have something that nobody in the world nobody else can get, only because you were born to that family, and you want to give that up. And that, of course, persuaded him. The bottom line is that we see from over here is that the unique quality of a Kohen is not by the character, not by his values, not even if he considers it important, but the very mere fact that he was born to the family of the kohanim, he has the ability to bless the Jewish people. Thirdly, there's something else that if you'll notice that while we do the priestly blessings, there is something that everybody else, the Israelites that are under the talus or that are watching and observing and receiving the blessing, there's another prayer they say while the priestly blessings are going on. And that is a blessing asking God that all the dreams that you have should be for the good. Why, during the time of the priestly blessings, what are you asking for? That your dreams should be good. Or even if you had a bad dream, it should turn good, it should be good. What does that have to do with the priestly blessings? No better time to talk about it. Fourth question that we have is that over the time, we see that the priestly blessings was not limited to the priests, to the kohanim. Meaning, for example, every single day the chazan, whether he's a kohen or not, says the priestly blessings. Parents give their children the priestly blessings. Always, traditionally, before Yom Kippur, we say the priestly blessings. Every single morning in our prayers, we say the priestly blessings. Why did the priestly blessings, which used to be limited, so to speak, and still today in the front, that it's their obligation, but now everybody, so to speak, seems entitled to give those priestly blessings? How did this become a standard blessing that Jewish people give? So let's dive into this a little deeper by analyzing, first of all, this week's Torah reading. This week's Torah reading, which is we're going to be reading on Shabbos, is called Parshas NASO. It is generally read either, most cases, it's the Shabbos right after Shavuos, right after we got to Torah. Very seldomly is it read before Shavuos, but most cases we read it after Shavuos. It happens to be the longest Torah reading in the Torah, made up of 176 verses. 176 verses. It's so incidentally, in fact, the longest Talmudic tractate has 176 verses, 176 pages, and the longest Psalm in Tehillim has 176 verses as well. There's something unique about 176. So just then a little side note here. What's so unique about 176? So there's a few things about 176. 176, first of all, is 8 times 22 is 176. How many letters are there in the alphabet? 22. 8 is a symbolism of infinity, infinite. telling us that even though you have learned all of the Aleph base, you think you went from Aleph to Taf, you've covered everything in the Torah, there's still a lot more you haven't learned. The Torah is infinite. You still haven't. Therefore, even the longest tractate in the Talmud, the longest Torah reading, or the longest Tehillim, 176, but that's just scratching the surface. Others want to say, interesting thing as well, in Judaism we find, and Kabbalistically especially, that whatever there is in holiness, there's a counterpower in impurity. And always the holiness has to counter the impurity that's there. What is the counter of Jacob? Esau. Those were the twins. Esau is symbolic of impurity. Jacob is symbolic of purity. Esau is symbolic of those that oppose the Torah, while Jacob is symbolic of studying the Torah. The greatest opponent of the children of Esau that we read in the Torah reading of Vayishlach, it tells us about all his generals and the people that were considered the opponents of Esau. One of his names were the general of Tzefo. Tzefo, with the numeric value, is 176. To counter the evil of Esau, we have 176 verses or pages, number 176 of the longest to counter that. So that's just a little side tidbit. But what are we telling us? There's a certain symbolism in this. What's the symbolism when it tells us that the longest Torah reading, when do we read it? The week after Shavuos. So there's one reason that's given, is because right after Shavuos, when we got the Torah, we're telling God, we're not upset about this. On the contrary, we're very happy that we got the Torah, to the extent that we're real willing to sit in shul and listen to the longest Torah reading, and that we're willing to study the Torah as long as it takes and as long as it is. And we're very happy with the gift that we received on Shavuos. They say, like an example, once this kid comes to a wedding, and he asks his dad, how am I going to know who the bride and groom is? So he looks around. The bride, it's pretty simple to figure out who the bride is. The bride is the one wearing the white dress, and everybody's dancing around her, but how does he know the groom? Everybody's wearing a tuxedo, everybody's wearing a suit. The groom looks like another 30 people in. The father tells the child, you'll see who the bride goes home with, you'll know that's who the groom is. The same idea is also, when it came to the giving of the Torah, all the nations of the world may have been there. But who is considered the bride of God? Who's the groom of God? Who's the one that God's married to? Is the one that takes the Torah home. The one who's willing to accept it. And even after Shavuos, even after all the cheesecake and all the wonderful things, they're still studying the Torah. That's what we see, and that's why we look at the Torah reading of NASO is the week after Shavuos. But a little deeper. If you look something very specific in the Torah reading of NASO, as we mentioned, has the blessings of the priests, the kohanic blessings in this week's Torah reading. What's unique about these blessings is that every single morning we make a number of blessings when we wake up the first thing in the morning. We wash our hands, we thank God for the rooster that crows, for the wisdom, for the clothing, that we're able to stand up, that we have shoes, that we're who we are, and all the wonderful things that we have, and all the special blessings. One of the things we do is we make a blessing on the Torah. The blessing that we say, that any person that gets called to an aliyah makes that blessing, we say that blessing, the blessing before studying Torah. After we say the blessing of studying Torah, in order that the blessing should not be a blessing in vain, we go on then to say verses from the Torah. Not only verses from the Torah, but verses from the Mishnah as well. The verses from the Torah that we say are the priestly blessings. Then we go on to say a Mishnah. The Mishnah that we choose is from the tractate of Peah, which that Mishnah talks about how a person enjoys, by doing a mitzvah, you enjoy the fruits in this world. However, the true reward for the mitzvahs we do come in the world to come. And the Mishnah concludes, but the study of Torah supersedes everything. Why is it specifically this Torah reading in conjunction with this Mishnah that's read? Why do we read about the creation of the universe, the Ten Commandments? Why is it that these priestly blessings that we want to justify our making the blessing on the Torah, we continue by saying the priestly blessings? What does that have to do with anything? There's a rabbi by the name of Pinchas Friedman who wrote a book recently, who gave an explanation in the name of Rabbi Amram Goin, and he says as follows. He says, if you look at the priestly blessings we mentioned earlier, there are 60 letters. How many tractates are there in the Talmud? 60 tractates. If you take the 3, Baba Basra, Baba Tzibah, Baba Kama, makes it 60, or else it's 63, but there are 60 tractates, and therefore he says, a person who studies all the 60 tractates you're considered this great genius, and that's why you're called a Kohen, a genius, the one who studies all the great 60 tractates of the Talmud. But over here it tells us our blessing, our request is asking of God after we make a blessing in the Torah that we should be able to study all the tractates of the Talmud and all of the Torah. That's what one wants to explain. So we see over here a connection and some type of correlation between the giving of the Torah, the priestly blessings, the Torah reading that we're going to be reading of NASO, the very fact that we're asking of God on the eve of the giving of the Torah, that all of the Torah that we study should be a blessing to us, and we should be able to study Torah appropriately, and we should all be befitting and able to receive those special blessings. So what is these blessings? What are these 60 words, 60 letters that we're saying that are so important? So let's look at the details of the blessing. So the blessing of this week's Torah reading, which is mentioned, God tells Aaron and his sons, this is the way you are going to bless the Jewish people. What is the blessing? Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and protect you. Yoyer Hashem panav eilecha v'yichuneka. May God shine His countenance amongst you and be gracious towards you. Yisa Hashem panav eilecha. Hashem should lift His eyes, His face towards you, v'yasim lecha shalom, and bring you peace. If you notice, the first verse is Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. 3 words. The second verse is Yoyer Hashem panav eilecha v'yichuneka. 5 words. The last verse, the third one, is Yisa Hashem panav eilecha v'yasim lecha shalom. 7 words. Notice how the blessing continues to grow from 3 to 5 to 7. Number one key ingredient of a blessing, it should always get better. If you even look in the blessing, what is the first blessing? So Rashi, the commentator on the Torah, explains and says, Yivarechecha Hashem, God should bless you, v'yishmerecha, and protect you. Well, so Rashi explains, what does that mean? He should bless you that you should have all the money you need, v'yishmerecha, and should protect it, that you don't lose it. A person can get lots of money and then spend it on the wrong things, God forbid. He has to pay hospital bills, whatever it may be. But you should have money, you should be able to enjoy it, and that's why if you look at the word bracha, yivarechecha, take the word yivarechecha or bracha, the first letter is a bet. Beis is 2. That's 1 times 2 times 1. Reish is 200. 2 times 100. Chaf, the baruch, is 20. 2 times 10. Telling you that every single blessing that what we talk about, a baruch, what does it mean a blessing? That everything you have is multiplied. Everything you have becomes more. You get 1, you get 2 from it. You have 2, you get 4. You have 4, you have 6. God forbid if it's not protected, what happens? The 2 becomes a 1, the 10 becomes a 5, and you lose.
Why is the first thing that they're talking about money?
It's not only money because a person needs sustenance. If you notice, we mentioned actually a few weeks ago, good question, but 2 weeks ago we spoke about why most of the Torah's blessings are about physical. The spiritual blessings are not even mentioned, and we're going to get to that domain in a moment. So what we see over here is that the blessing that over here the Torah is telling us is, Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha, you should have what you need. God should give it to you, not only should have what you need, but it should be protected. Number 2, Yoyer Hashem panav eilecha, God should show to you a smiling face, this countenance. That means not only about money, but in all your requests, God should be able to give you what you need. And even more so, Yisa Hashem panav eilecha, Rashi explains, that God should withhold His anger. That if God forbid you do something wrong, and because of that, that should enrage, that should cause God to be upset with you, you should, and because of that, you may not be able to get the proper blessing and sustenance, it shouldn't affect you. The Kabbalists explain that if you notice, and one of the things that we're told, when right before the priestly blessing starts, there's an announcement, you cover yourself with the talis, and for the women, not to look at the kohanim. Right? Why shouldn't we look at the kohanim? Somebody's giving you a blessing, look at them. Kabbalah explains because when the kohanim bless the Jewish people, they pick up their hands. And their hands they put together in a special formation with 5 fingers in each, putting it together becomes 10, which is symbolic of the 10 sephiros, the 10 attributes of God, of the way God corresponds His blessing into the world. And when the kohanim put their 10 fingers together, the divine presence is resting amongst them. And therefore we cannot look at that holiness, that awesomeness, that divinity that is coming upon them. So the Shekhinah, The divine presence is by the Jewish people, is by the priests, by the Kohen, when they bless the Jewish people, when they hold their 10 fingers together. Through those 10 fingers, the channels of blessings and spirituality and sustenance come to the Jewish people. So the question is, why did the Kohanim have to bless the Jewish people? At the end of the blessing, the Jewish people, the Kohanim say, God tells the Kohanim, you bless the Jewish people, va'ani, and I, God, will bless you. Why can't God just bless us directly? Why does it have to come through the Kohen? Why does the Kohen have to be the one to bless the Jewish people? Why can God just bless us? Even more so. Seemingly, a blessing has an interesting dichotomy. On one hand, you're going to get a blessing. What is the blessing for? You feel like you're missing something in your life. You need something to be able to overcome the challenges that you're coming across. And therefore, you say, I need a blessing. So bless me, because I should fulfill a need that I'm lacking. That's what it seems like. You're asking for a blessing because I'm lacking something, and that blessing is going to give me what I'm lacking. On the other hand, when we make a blessing, what are we saying? We pick up a fruit, and we make a blessing, Borei Priyait. We make a blessing in Kiddush. We make a blessing in the morning. Why are we making a blessing? God needs our blessings. God's missing something. Why are we making a blessing? What are we making in that blessing that God, when we make a blessing on the Torah, I have to elevate the Torah? God already gave me the Torah. It's holy. What am then I should make a blessing to God. I'm saying, Baruch Atah Hashem. Who am I elevating? Why am I making a blessing? So if the blessing is for God, what does God need? And if the blessing, if the concept of a blessing is that I'm fulfilling a lack of something, God's not lacking anything. The Alter Rebbe explained something very fascinating in Likutei Torah and Torah, or in Hasidism, it's explained something that the word blessing in Hebrew means bracha. But we translate blessing as filling a need. But in fact, the word blessing is something deeper than that and something greater than that. And if we look in the Mishnah, and in other words in Hebrew, there's a concept that if you go into a vineyard, for example, the vines, they grow very high. So instead of growing very tall, they bend it down, they root it back into the ground, and then it makes another vine. And it goes up and down, up and down. In Hebrew, that is called hamavrich. When I draw down, when I bring down. I take something that's higher up, and I bring it down. That's called baruch or mavrich. The same thing is also we find in the book of Genesis when Eliezer brought the camels and he's giving them to drink. It says, "Vayavrich hasagmalim," and he bent the camels down that they should be able to drink. What the Alter Rebbe explains to us is a blessing is drawing down from above. I'm bringing down something that may have gotten stuck in a higher level, something that may have been intercepted and hasn't come down into this world. So when you go over to a person and you give them a blessing, you're not filling a need. You're bringing down the sustenance from above and saying it should pour on top of you. When I say Baruch Atah Hashem and a blessing of the Torah, I'm saying Baruch. I want to draw down Atah you, the greatest level of spirituality of the Torah that I'm learning, not to elevate, but on the contrary, to bring it down into this world. The whole point of a blessing is to take the spiritual and make it physical. To bring from above, below.
Excuse me.
Yes?
When we say bracha on food,
correct.
Then
I'm taking the spiritual energy of the food the way it is above, bringing it into the food. Automatically, when I bring holiness into this world, what do I then? Then this world becomes elevated.
Now I thought we said the blessing on the food, and
it's not a contradiction.
Something that's material.
But how can you make something? I am a material being. I cannot make it spiritual. So I need to have it. So even if I make it, but if I'm physical, then how can I make it something spiritual?
Food is physical,
and I'm also physical. The last I checked.
All right.
So I'm a physical human being only because God gave me the ability to make a bracha. He gave me the mitzvah to make a bracha. The spiritual entity, I draw down into the food that I eat. It is now, this food is being utilized for a mitzvah. And now I've elevated the food and myself as well. I cannot elevate something if I don't draw down. If I don't bring from above, I can't bring it up. And that's we're going back to a whole separate discussion we once discussed before, the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, and only then were they able to get the Torah. That God had to come down, only then were they able to climb up. But let's go back to what we're talking about. So what we see over here is, no problem. So what we see over here, the idea, and we mentioned interesting talking about elevation and revealing, just we find that when Jethro, for example, came to Moshe, and he tells Moshe, blessed is God who saved the Jewish people. And the Talmud bemoans the fact that the Jewish people had to wait for Jethro to be the first one to say, blessed are you, God. And many of the commentaries asked on the Talmud, why? Look, Moses sang song to Hashem, said, Oz Yashir, we say it every single day in the prayers. There was already previous people, Eliezer, when he saw that his prayers were answered, he said, Baruch Hashem. Shem said, Baruch Hashem. Avram said it when he was saved. Shem said it when Avram was saved from the people of Sodom. What happened? Why all of a sudden Jethro was getting the most credit? And the commentator and the Rebbe explained something very fascinating, and the difference is that because Yisro, the difference between Yisro, Noach, Eliezer, and everything else, all those other people lived a spiritual life. And when they were talking about blessing as God, they were all still in the spiritual realm. The only one that was coming from a materialistic place, the only one that saw the spirituality brought them into the physical world was Yisro, because he came from a place of idolatry. And because of that, he was able to see how the holiness comes down into this world. He was the first one to appreciate the drawing down of the holiness, the transformation that the world was going through because of that holiness. So he says, Baruch Hashem, blessed are you, God, that you've finally taken over and brought a transformation even to a place of idolatry of Jethro, a person like Jethro. But what we see over here is that the blessing of the kohanim is something that it's not about elevation, but on the contrary, it's about bringing down. It's about making sure that a person gets his blessing without any interception, without any interruption. The concept of the blessing, of the priestly blessing, is something which causes that the blessings that are intended for you, you should get without anybody bothering it, without any interruption. For example, like we learn about in a few weeks' time, we're going to read about the staff of Aaron who sprouted flowers with the first, so too, that our blessings that are intended to be for us should be without interruption and quickly as well. What does this mean? That this teaches us, and it takes us even a little deeper, that every single person is seemingly entitled to good and should be blessed with all the best. The problem is, and that's what happens on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, God decides what we should have. But what happens is throughout the year, these things are sitting in cubbies and lockers. They're not necessarily making its way down to where they're supposed to. So imagine you have this person, you say you're supposed to get your raise, but it has to go through all the bureaucracy until you actually get it. You need to have somebody that's going to, what do they call it? Short line it or make sure that it gets right away to you without any bureaucratic steps in the middle. This is exactly what happens. On Rosh Hashanah, every person gets blessed from God, what they have to get for the coming year. But there could be interruptions based on our behavior and things what we do. The priestly blessings is there, that we should get that everything we deserve and more without streamlined, without any interruption, without any bureaucratic steps in the way. Why is it? Why is it sometimes that a person doesn't get what they are intended to even on Rosh Hashanah? And that is because we may be behaving in different ways than we were. And because of that, that can be impeding our blessings that we get. One of the great commentators known as the Rashba explains that the word bracha comes from the word brecha, like a swimming pool, like an orchard, storage. That every single person has storage, has shefa, has something, has blessings that should come to them. And each person, it can come in different ways and it collects by the individual. And when we're asking of God, Baruch Atah, bring that deserving for us that has to come to our storage, that we should be able to get it, that should come to our swimming pool. For example, we find that at the end of the days of King David, as he was feeling ill, his son, Adoniyahu, Ben Chagit, decided that he's going to take advantage of the vacuum of his father being ill, and he's going to call himself king even before his father dies. Adoniyahu announces, he gets all his entourage, and they crown him as king, coronate him as king, while his father's lying in bed. Bathsheba, his wife, the mother of King Solomon, comes to Nathan the prophet and says, what's going on over here? I was promised that my son Solomon was going to be the king, and look what's going on outside. Adoniyo over there is crowning himself as king. King Nathan the prophet goes in to King David and tells him what's happening, and King David says, go right now and go to the well over there, go to the spring of Gihon, and that's at the end of Jerusalem, and you're going to anoint King Solomon to be the king, and he will be the king. When the general ben Yehoiada heard this, he announced, Amen, Kain Yehi Ratzain. Amen, so should be the will. The question is, why are you saying so should be the will? They were doing it right now. What do you mean? So should be the will sounds like something that's going to happen in the future, not something that's happening right now. And the commentaries explain because what he was really saying is even though that I can do something physically, there can still be interruptions, bureaucratic interruptions spiritually. And therefore when he answers Amen, when we answer Amen, we are actually changing from the spiritual into the physical, that it should actually have an impact, and all the bureaucracy and all the prosecution should step aside. There's also the same idea is also said when we make a mishaberach for somebody who's not well. So you make the mishaberach, but what's most important is not the mishaberach, is the Amen that's answered after the mishaberach. Because when we're saying Amen afterwards, that we're saying that whatever blessing I just said should be true and should happen and should come into this world. And it's brought down. And this is the idea of the priestly blessings. The priestly blessings aren't just about the ideas of superficiality, money, this that you need. But it's that whatever blessings are deserving for the individual, they should happen quickly and swiftly without any interruption. This is also when we talk about the same idea in any type of things, in any protocols that we have, wherever there is the concept of bureaucratic or impediments or that may be happening to any type of thing is so pragmatic that we see it in every single type of Judaism that we talk about answering Amen to a blessing or in any idea. And this is the kohanim, as they were the priests. They are, so to speak, those in charge to see the holiness of this world. They are the ones that have the ability to bring down, to streamline these blessings, to be able to go above the bureaucracy and bring it down and give to every single person whatever they need in the greatest blessings. There's a story told.
So is the Kohen like an intermediary?
Not an intermediary. God doesn't need intermediaries, but the Kohen has the ability, because of their spiritual makeup and why we're going to get to in a moment, they have the ability to bring the blessings and streamline it and bring it to every person. There's an interesting story that's told about. There was a fellow, his name was Reb Shmeryo Gerari. He lived in Tel Aviv, a chassid of the Rebbe. And he used to come every single year to New York to be by the Rebbe for the month of Tishrei. He was the one that used to take out the Torah by Ne'ilah. He would open up the ark by Ne'ilah and give the Torah to the Rebbe. He was the one, he brought that honor. One year, he came to New York, and when he was there was at that time, the rabbi, the great Rebbe of Kapistnitz, another Hasidic master from an Hungarian background, passed away. And the funeral was in Borough Park, the neighboring community. And the Rebbe asked this Rabbi Gerari if he was by the funeral. So he said, yeah, he was by the funeral. So the Rebbe asked him, was there a lot of people by the funeral? So he said, yeah, he was a big rabbi. A lot of people came to the funeral. And the Rebbe told him, he says, when there's a lot of people that come to the funeral, it is a good sign for the soul. Because when the soul comes above, and they saw that there was a lot of people by the funeral down below, then he gets a big escort up above, and all doors open for them up above, and nobody asks any questions. This is what the Rebbe told him. You think about it also today. You used to come alone to, let's say, an office. They can intimidate you, ask you a bunch of questions. You come with an entourage. Oh, this looks like an important person. They whistle you way through. So this fellow, Reb Shmeryo Gerari, took a little bit of a hint of this story. He comes back to Israel. He was an elderly fellow already, and he was also a man with means. So he went to the yeshiva in Kfar Chabad, and he says, when I die, I'm giving a donation that the whole yeshiva comes to my funeral. He went to the yeshiva in Lud, gave them a donation. He says, when I die, I want the whole yeshiva by my funeral. Like this, he's guaranteed. He knows he's going to have a straight access, no interruptions. It so happened to be the fascinating thing, and I was actually there when he passed away. And on Yom Kippur, right before Kol Nidre, he opened the ark to give the Torah to the Rebbe. Right before he took the Torah out of the ark, he passed away. In 770, right in front of everybody, he passed away. I remember them saying that they had to do CPR on him, and they brought him out. He was buried the day after Yom Kippur at a funeral. You can imagine there was a lot of people there, not only the yeshiva of Kfar Chabad and Tel Aviv, but all the guests that were there, and the Rebbe even went out to his funeral as well, which also brought more people, so you can imagine his wish was fulfilled. But the bottom line is, what we see over here is, the idea of the blessing of the kohanim is just like Aaron's, whose staff sprouted without any issues. And the almonds came on it, as we're going to read about. So too, the point of the blessing of the kohanim is to bring about the blessing in the quickest and the most best way, without anything holding it back. Now that we understand the blessing, so why is it that the kohanim? Why the kohanim? You just asked, why are they the people to give that blessing? Why were they the ones to be in charge to streamline the blessings of God? Why were they the ones that they can force the blessing through all the bureaucracy and get it to the people that need it? And we mentioned this once before when we spoke about the laws of leprosy, about the unique quality that the kohanim have. And one of the unique things that we find, and we see this in the blessing of the kohanim, before the kohanim give a blessing, they have to make a blessing themselves. They say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, God, the King of the universe, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav etzivanu, that you blessed, that you commanded us, you sanctified us with the mitzvahs, and you commanded us, levarech es amo Yisrael, to bless the Jewish nation, ba'ahava, with love. No other mitzvah does it say, God, blessed are you, God, who commanded me the mitzvah of shaking the lulav, with love, eating the matzah, with love. Nowhere else do you find that commandment. Why the commandment when it comes to blessing the Jewish people? There's a qualification. You have to bless the Jewish people with love. Why all of a sudden is this blessing different than anything else that we're telling you how to feel? And that is because it's what the blessing is all about. The very fact that God gave the children of Aaron the obligation, the responsibility to bless the Jewish people tells us what this blessing is all about. God wants that it should inspire love amongst the Jewish people, that they should be able to overcome the challenges, the trials and tribulations, and to be able to get the Jewish people to come together. The very fact is that when people love one another, they are able to overcome any difficulty. When there's animosity and there's hatred and there's divisiveness, then of course nothing works out. But when there's love, you can streamline anything you want. You have the blessings. When there's love, you see the blessings. One of the stories are told about from Nachum Mendel of Haraduk, one of the students of the Maggid of Mezrich. They were once sitting around and having a Hasidic gathering. And all of a sudden a person came in crying to them, "Bless me! My wife is not feeling well." And they're looking at them. Who are we to bless you? We're just simple people. We can't bless you. All of a sudden, the Alter Rebbe got up. He was sitting amongst them. And he turns to his friends and he says, "Have we forgotten what our teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich, told us? That when Jews get together, even the great angel Michael, the archangel of the Jewish people, can't accomplish what when Jewish people get together when there's a Hasidic gathering. When God sees his children sitting together in love, and they ask for another person that he should feel better, God answers his prayers." The same thing is also we find in the book of Leviticus. It says, "Love your fellow as yourself, I am God." What does one thing have to do with the other? Love your fellow as yourself is a commandment. I am God. Not by every mitzvah does it say I am God. What's the connection? Because when two Jews say, "I want to love you like myself," and show the love that they have for one another, God says, "I want to be with you guys. I want to be part of your camaraderie. I want to be part of your friendship." They say the story. An example to this is, there was once this fellow who was judged to be hanged. That he was punished, death penalty. Right before the king is watching the big procession, this terrible individual that he's now going to be hanged. But right before he sees he's hanged, he sees a commotion going on. A guy comes back, he's talking back and forth. He says, "What's going on over here?" So he says, this guy's his friend. And he's saying, instead of hanging my friend, he says, hang me. Why should that guy be hung? The king says, one second. Let this guy off the hook, but on one condition. That they let me into this friendship. That I'm part of this friendship. Such a friendship, where a guy is willing to give up his life for his friend, I want to be friends with them. This is what God tells us. When there's love amongst Jewish people, when Jewish people get along, when the love exists, God says, that's where I want to be. That's where the blessings are streamlined. Who are the ones that are able to have such a love? Who are the people that are able to endear such a love to the Jewish people? Who are the ones who naturally have such a love to the Jewish people? Are the kohanim, are the priests. Why? Because they get it from their great-great-great-grandfather. Their great-grandfather Aaron was a person who embodied such type of love. Think about it. The first time the Torah mentions and tells us about this fellow Aaron was when Moshe refused to go what God told him to do, to go to the land of Egypt and take out the Jewish people. What does God say? Don't worry, your brother Aaron, he will be your spokesperson. So Moshe says, how's Aaron even going to know what's going to happen? God tells him, don't worry, you go, he'll meet you, but there's a key word. He will see you and he will be happy for you. What does that mean? God is telling to Moses about Aaron that he's not just your regular person. You know, imagine you go and tell your friend, your coworker, I got a raise. What does the coworker think? Why didn't I get the raise? Or you tell your friend, I just got a position, the headhunter just called me, and they want to offer me VP positions. What is the guy thinking? Hey, I've been working at this job longer, nobody called me. But now Aaron was not like that. Aaron hears his younger brother is being called by God to lead the Jewish people out. And what does he say? Come, I'm happy. Tell me when the Kiddush is. I'm showing up. He was happy for the Jewish people. He was happy for his brother. This is what the Torah tells us. This is what the Torah tells us about the Jewish people and about the people that are the ones to love the Jewish people. The ones that are there to bless the Jewish people. The ones that are there to bless the Jewish people. Aaron was a person who we can see was a person who personified love, personified caring for his brother, personified caring for another person. This is what we see especially. Just wait for them to go outside. Just a pause there? Okay. So we have, okay. This is the last Monday of school, so we'll give it to them. So, okay. So we talk about, especially if you look into the Chumash, the whole book of Genesis, brothers are not getting along. Start from the first story. Cain doesn't get along with Hevel. Then you go to a little bit later, then you have Yitzchak and Yishmael, Yaakov and Esav, Yosef and his brothers. All of a sudden, brothers are getting along. Not only they're getting along, but Moshe and Aaron are complementing each other. Aaron cares for his younger brother. He's so happy and he's willing to be his assistant, his spokesperson. Not only is he not jealous of his brother, not only is he not making an issue, but he's happy for him. This is the family. His descendants are the ones that can instill love, because their whole job was to be able to bring love to the Jewish people. The kohanim did not have a portion in the land of Israel. Every other tribe got a special, specific part in the land of Israel. The kohanim were scattered together with the tribe of Levi in different places, and they were supported by the Jewish people. They served the Jewish people in the Holy Temple. They were the ones that brought about the sacrifices, the forgiveness, the atonement for the Jewish people. Because this is all stems from love that they have. The Zohar even says further. The Zohar tells us, Ki sifsei Kohen, it says that the lips of the Kohen are like an angel. That the very fact that they are like an angel is because they have kindness. Because they're sharing kindness. They share the love with one another. The Zohar tells us that the fact that the family of the Kohen, they're able to have a duality. On one hand, they show their care, their concern, their love for every single Jewish person. But we also know that the Kohens are rough guys. They're able to get angry. They're able to be tough and to know what has to go here. But what is the Zohar explains to us? The fact that they overpower that tough personality to have that caring concern for the Jewish people, that's what gives them the ability to bless the Jewish people. Because of this, they are the ones, a person who designates whose life is designated to holiness, a life who's dedicated to holiness. They are the ones that are able to bless the Jewish people. And as the Zohar continues, it is not only that they are blessing the Jewish people. As the Zohar says, a Kohen who does not love the community that he's blessing or the Jewish people should not go up to bless. Why? Because when you're blessing the Jewish people, Mr. Kohen, you are getting blessed. And if you're not going to bless them, and the only way you can bless them is out of love. And if you're not going to bless them out of love, it's not going to be a blessing. And then you're not going to get a blessing in return. And therefore we see the unbelievable importance, and the only one that was able to tell a person that they had leprosy, that they had the tzaras disease, was a Kohen. Because what does a person who has leprosy have to do, has the tzaras disease? He has to go around announcing that he's impure. Who can say that a person's impure? The greatest degradation that you can give to a person, that he has to announce, that he has to seclude himself from the community. It's so embarrassing. You can't just have any person decide that somebody should have that. Therefore, you need to have a Kohen, who you know that the Kohen hears and has the concern for every single person. And he knows that he is going to make sure that if he has to call and contaminate this individual to say that he is tzaras, he's going to do it with the utmost concern. Therefore, only such a family do we allow to decide to make that decision. So too here. Which family can really bless the Jewish people is only a family that has the ability to bless the Jewish people with love. Who are the ones that have the absolute love? Is only the kohanim, only the priestly blessings. With this we now understand why we also say the dreams, that our dreams should become good or true, or we should have good dreams during the priestly blessings. Because it tells us, it's brought in many of the holy books, and it's brought in the Talmud and in the Code of Jewish law, that if a person has a bad dream, or if he has a dream and he doesn't know what it is, he should go to people who are his friends and ask them for the interpretation. Because they will then tell him a good interpretation. And based on their good interpretation, that's what it would be. So too, we say it by the priestly blessings, because we know the Kohen has our best interest and is blessing us with out of love. And therefore our dreams will be interpreted for the best as well. With this we also understand, as we mentioned, why even today Israelites use that terminology and use the priestly blessings. And in fact, the Rebbe, when he would bless all the people before Yom Kippur, would begin with that blessing. And as well as now become the tradition, the Jewish people, when they bless one another, they use these blessings. And that is because, especially a father blessing his children, uses this, because how can you describe a better way of love other than the way the Torah describes what the blessing should be? That means the Torah's description of this blessing is the ultimate love language that you can give, and the greatest expression of love to one another. So as Jewish people, in fact in 1984, the Rebbe once by Farbrengen told everybody that they should turn to each other and give each other the priestly blessings. Because this is in effect, our way of inspiring love on one another and affecting love on one another by using these special priestly blessings. This is the terminology of language for the Torah. God help us that in the merit of the love that we have for one another and the merit, that camaraderie that this should create, looking at each other from only a happy place, and the fact that we get along with one another, this will bring about mercy upon high, that God bless us with everything we need. And as we read just last few days ago, that Shavuos is the same way on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that the gates of heaven are open without any prosecution to give us the blessing for the year for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So too on Shavuos, the gates of heaven are open to give us the blessings that we need for the study of Torah. So we should be able to continue to study Torah, enjoy Torah out of love, and thereby be a right vessel for God's blessings.